Shalom, all praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Racha Kodash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, and Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and informative. Isaiah chapter 13, verse 19. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency, shall be as when Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. And owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. In the news from the RT, China calls U.S. a direct threat to the world. Washington is making up excuses to preserve its hegemony, Beijing said. Washington intentionally hypes up the China threat as an excuse to boost its military spending, all in an effort to maintain its global dominance. The Chinese Defense Ministry said in a statement on Saturday that the President Joe Biden signed the 2023 U.S. National Defense Authorization Act into law. Facts have proven more than once that the U.S. is a direct threat to the international order and the culprit of the regional turbulence, said the ministry spokesman, Colonel Tan Kifi. The statement went on to claim that in the pursuit of his own interests, the U.S. on multiple occasions has either waged wars against other countries or created conflicts, i.e. proxy wars, coups, causing massive casualties and displacement of innocent civilians. The $858 billion U.S. military budget fiscal year 2023, and what precept should come to our minds. Joel chapter 3, verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, amongst the Gentile nations. Prepare war. For what war? The thorough woe, which cometh quickly, according to the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14. Hence the reason why we are in a season of war, according to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near where? In the valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. Let them come up. And this is the point. Beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. And so, these nations are taking and using their economic wealth towards the research, development, and enhancements of weapons of mass destruction, and particularly for hypersonic and intercontinental ballistic nuclear warheads. Okay? And this is why the scripture says here, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Plowshares and pruning hooks are instruments of agriculture. but swords and spears are instruments of war. And so these nations have been beating their plowshares, they've been taking their economic wealth and using it towards the research, development, and enhancements of swords, of weapons of mass destruction, and spears. Okay? And you're putting hooks into spears. Let the weak say, weak nations such as North Korea, say, I am strong, because now they have leveled the playing field, so to speak, because now they possess nuclear warheads. Okay? Countries such as North Korea and Iran. And that is the point. That is the scripture that should have had came to our minds after reading this particular part right here. The 858 billion US military budget for fiscal year 2023, which authorized 10 billion in security assistance and fast-tracked weapons procurement for Taiwan, is yet another in a series of provocation moves that seriously jeopardize the peace and stability in Taiwan Strait and increase the risk of China-US military conflict. So basically, the US is setting up the stage to have another proxy war with China, as they are currently having one with Russia in Ukraine. Okay? Read more. U.S. Defense Act is a political provocation, China. The Chinese People's Liberation Army further vowed to resolutely safeguard national reunification and territorial integrity of the country, warning that Washington has no other choice but to respect China's core interests and major concerns. The island of Taiwan has been self-governed since 1949, but never officially declared independence from Beijing, while China, views it as part of its one China territory. And tensions between Beijing and Taipei have been high since the visit of U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan in August. Washington must drop its old trick of unilateral bullying that it plays with Beijing. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi told U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in a phone call earlier this week. It has not worked with China in the past, nor will it work in the future. This concludes the article. In other news from the AP, Cubans search for holiday food amid deepening crisis. So, the Israelites in Cuba, which are the tribe of Manasseh, are experiencing famine, as well as other parts of the world as well. But in this article, we'll be speaking of and coming to a bit more understanding of the situation in Cuba. So it says Havana, AP, as Belkis Fajardo, 69, walks through the dense streets of downtown Havana with a small bag of lettuce and onion in hand. She wonders how she'll feed her family over the holidays. Scarcity and economic turmoil are nothing new to Cuba. So this is nothing new to Cuba. But what makes this so different? But Fajardo is among many Cubans to note that this year is different thanks to soaring inflation and deepening shortages. So soaring inflation and deepening shortages, this economic turmoil that Cuba is experiencing to ones that it had prior. We'll see what we can scrap together to cook for the end of the year. Fajardo said, everything is really expensive, so you buy little things, or buy things little by little as you can. And if you can't, you don't eat. But inflation makes it very harder to do those things, okay? Because inflation erodes the value of a country's currency, okay? And I don't know what currency they use over there in Cuba. As a matter of fact, let me just check it up real quick. Please bear with me 1 second. Okay, so Cuba uses the Cuban peso. Okay, and the Cuban peso has been depreciating in value. One Cuban peso is equivalent to 0.042 United States dollar. Let's try 100 Cuban peso. So 100 Cuban peso is equivalent to $4.17. What about 1,000? 1,000 is $41.67. So the US dollar obviously overshadows the current value of the Cuban peso, which has been experiencing serious inflation, thereby causing Cubans to struggle in keeping up with the cost of goods and services due to the inflation in the country. Basic goods such as chicken, beef, eggs, milk, flour, and toilet paper are difficult and often impossible to find in state stores. So people can't even find, let alone buy, chicken, beef, eggs, milk, flour, and toilet paper, because these things are currently difficult and often impossible to find in state stores because they are what? Shortages, scarcities, okay? Famine. When they do appear, they often come at hefty prices. Why? Because of inflation. Either from informal shops, resellers, or inexpensive stores only accessible to those with foreign currency, i.e., the US dollar. It's far out of the range of the average Cuban state salary. Approximately 5,000 peso a month, or 29 US dollar on the island's more widely used informal exchange rate. Damn. So that shit is really eroded. Nearby, a pound of pork leg, which you Israelites, you're not supposed to be eating that, according to the law, was selling for 450 peso, around $2.60. Not everyone can buy things. Not everyone has a family who sends remittances, money from abroad. Fajardo said, with the money my daughter earns and my pension, we're trying to buy what we can, but it's extremely hard. In October, the Cuban government reported that inflation had risen 40% over the past year and had a significant impact on the purchasing power for many on the island. While Fajardo managed to buy vegetables, rice, and beans, he still has no meat for Christmas or New Year's. The shortages are among a number of factors stoking a broader discontent on the island, which has given rise to protests in recent years, as well as an emergency migratory flight from Cuba. On Friday, U.S. authorities reported stopping Cubans 34,675 times along the Mexican border in November, up 21% from 28,848 times in October. So a lot of Cubans are attempting to flee over here into the U.S. to escape their current financial woes in their home country, Cuba. Pardon me. The dissatisfaction was made even more evident during Cuba's local elections last month, when 31.5% of eligible voters didn't cast a ballot, a far cry from the nearly 100% turn out during Fidel Castro's lifetime. Despite being the highest voting abstention rate the country had seen since the Cuban Revolution, the government still hailed it as a victory. However, in an address to Cuban lawmakers last week, President Miguel Diaz-Canel acknowledged the government's shortcomings in handling the country's complex mix of crises, particularly food shortages. I feel an erroneous dissatisfaction that I haven't been able to accomplish through leadership of the country the results that the Cuban people need to attain long desired and expected prosperity, he said. The administration provoked a standing ovation in the Congressional Assembly, made up solely of politicians from Diaz-Canel's Communist Party. But Ricardo Torres, a Cuban and economist fellow at American University in Washington, said he saw the words as meaningless without a real plan to address contentment. People want answers from the government, he said, not words, answers. For years, the Caribbean nation has pushed much of a blame of its for its economic turmoil on the United States' six-decade trade embargo on Cuba, which has strangled much of the island's economy. However, many observers, including Torres, stressed that the government's mismanagement of the economy and reluctancy to embrace the private sector are also to blame. On a Friday, a long line of Cubans waited outside an empty state-run butchery, waiting for a coveted item, a leg of pork. So niggas was covered in pork, an unlawful animal that we're not supposed to eat according to our law as Israelites, to feed their families on New Year's Eve. About a dozen people the Associated Press asked for an interview said they were scared to speak, including one who said it could have consequences for us. Estrell 67. And you know what? The time's gonna come when them niggas gonna be fighting over that piece of leg, that unlawful leg. This is what I call it, the unlawful leg. Oh man. And it's gonna be far worse over here, June Jacob's trouble, because the majority of Jake is here in America, Babylon the Great, the land of our captivity, and the land of our judgment. You know, where the Lord is going to judge 2/3 and deliver the elect. And I pray I'm of the elect as well as you brothers and a few sisters, okay? Because the Lord is going to bring a lot of judgments during the time of Jacob's trouble. Jacob's trouble is mainly referring to over here in America, Babylon the Great, okay? Now, Jacob is scattered abroad, but Jacob's trouble specifically is going to be happening here in America, Babylon the Great, okay? It says about a dozen people the Associated Press asked, and you're going to have niggas fighting for that unlawful leg, you know? Niggas going to be cannibalizing themselves, you know, their families, their kids, you know, during Jacob's trouble, because it will be worse than anything that had ever happened to our people in history on the earth. It'll be unprecedented. The word unprecedented means never known or seen before. Okay? It says, Estrella, 67, has shown up to the state butcher every morning for more than 2 weeks, waiting her turn to buy that unlawful animal, that pork to share with her children, grandchildren, and siblings. So far, she's come up dry. Although pork is available to buy from private butchers, it's often far more expensive than at state-run facilities, which subsidize prices. So she waits, hopeful that she'll be able to cook Cuba's traditional holiday dish. See that? That pork, man. If you're lucky, we'll be able to buy it today, she said. If you're not, we'll come back again tomorrow. This concludes the article. All you Israelites out there that love to eat that abomination, the Lord is going to bring judgment upon you unless you repent. Okay, so famine is coming. 2nd Ezra, chapter 6, verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. So your key foods, your Family Dollars, your supermarkets, your grocery stores, soon all these places are going to appear as if they've never been filled with food, with goods. Your storehouses are going to appear as if they've never been filled up or restocked. They're going to be found empty. Okay? Why? Because of famine. Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 16. When I shall send upon them the evil arrows of famine, which shall be for their destruction. Famine is a scarcity of goods such as food, drink, victuals in general. which shall be for their destruction, and which I will send to destroy you, and I will increase the famine upon you. I will break your staff of bread. So will I send upon you famine and evil beast, and they shall berave thee, and pestilence and blood shall pass through thee. And I will bring the sword upon thee. I, the Lord Yahweh, have spoken it. So the Lord is going to bring all these things upon 2/3 of the nation of Israel during the time of Jacob's trouble. Okay? And after the Lord has delivered his elect, he's going to obliterate this land, Babylon the Great. Isaiah chapter 13, verse 19. In Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, so America is what? The glory of kingdoms. Okay? The beauty of the Chaldees. And who are the modern day Chaldeans? The Edomites. Okay? The ancient Chaldeans, or who? Your warlocks. Okay? The Chaldees' excellency shall be as when the Most High Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh, shall overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall their shepherds make their fold there. Why? Because this entire land will be completely eviscerated, according to biblical prophecy, by nuclear fire. Wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. And owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there, and the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in their desolate houses, and dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Because the Lord is going to make a speedy riddance of her in 1 hour, according to Revelation chapter 18, verse 17. So with that, I pray this lesson was edifying and informative to the elect. Until the next, Lord's willing, I say shalom.